Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Smooth Operators Guide by Livedocs. This episode, we have Mike Taylor, prompt engineer, book author, co founder, and growth mentor. Mike has an impressive background in AI and prompt engineering and marketing. So, Mike, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hey, yeah, good to be on the podcast. I've got kind of a random background of all these different projects that I've worked on, so it just kind of struck me listening to that introduction. But yeah, I started a marketing agency called Ladder, and grew that to 50 people. Left in 2020. I got into prompt engineering and now work full time as a prompt engineer. I just had a book come out actually through O'Reilly on that, and then along the way, I've also been doing mentoring through Growth Mentor. So yeah, lots of stuff we can cover.
Mike, you built a 50-person marketing agency ladder. What are some of the key challenges you faced while scaling the agency, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, we ran into a bunch of issues, as you can imagine. It was the first company that I started, so we were learning everything as we went. The first thing that we ran into is just like, how do you hire? Because we wanted to hire people who were really good at growth marketing. It was a relatively niche thing back then. I'd read a blog post by Brian Balfour on growth hacking, and I was like, this is really cool, and started consulting, freelancing, and then got to the point where we could hire people. But the problem that we had was it was very hard to, like, we couldn't afford early on, like, people who had experience. So we had to then figure out this problem of, okay, how do you hire for people with no experience, and how do you check that they have the potential? And we developed a bunch of different tests and things to do that. And then the bigger challenge was just like, how do you train them and get them to the point where over 3 to 6 months they're actually contributing a lot to the business and they can manage clients and take things off my plate. So yeah, those are the two of the big challenges that stood out. And then we had this like other big problem as we grew. The people that we had trained who were at that point then, like, they'd put a lot of effort in and they were really good at what they were doing. And we started to lose them to our clients or to other companies. Like they became very desirable people to hire once we had trained them. So then it was this case of like, how do we build an organization that can retain talent over time? And how do we set up a business model that gives us higher margins, means that we can afford to pay more. We just kept running headfirst into challenge after challenge. And once you
Okay.
solve one problem, then the next problem appears, and it just feels like I just did that for 6 years and looked up, and there was a team of 50 people around me. It's kind of nuts.
VEX Power looks super interesting, right? Like prompt engineering, marketing, mix modeling, and all the good stuff. I myself have like a little bit of a background in like computer science engineering, and I almost always leverage some technical skills inside growth and marketing. So I'm just curious, like, can you talk a bit about the courses in like VEX Power?
Yeah, so Vexpower came out of my experience at the agency where, because we had to train people in how to do these technical tasks, and there's not that many good courses out there actually for marketers who know how to code, or developers who have been tasked with growth initiatives. We basically just had to do that internally. Like I found the interesting thing at Ladder was that what they didn't want was like these highly polished like slide decks. And what they really wanted to do was just like watch me work. I made the training for Vexpower along the same lines, where it's kind of like on the job training for this type of technical task, and it's targeted at marketers who know how to code, or developers who are working on growth, and it's kind of like jumping on a call with me and I show you how to do something, right? And then you're kind of in a scenario where you have to solve that problem for a company. Every course is like a specific problem and then a specific solution to that problem that I've faced in my career, or James, my co-founder on that. That like when he creates courses, there's things that he's found useful as well. So that's the general kind of pitch for Vexpower. It's more of a lifestyle business. Like we don't work in it full time. We just do actually one day a month is enough, because we've automated a lot of it. with LLMs, which we could talk a little bit about. It's kind of fun, but yeah, we went from doing 3 days a week on Vexpower to 1 day a month. So that's kind of a fun story. But yeah, it's a really interesting crowd. Like the people that do the courses are my kind of people. You know, they work in growth. Like they're technical. They can hack together a solution, and really it's just kind of me showing other people the cool solutions that I found. So that's really like what we're doing with Vexpower.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm quite interested in that myself because, yeah, I'd love to explore more about that later, probably after the recording.
Mhm.
So, I mean, now, like, I just want to, like, what inspired you to shift your focus from running a marketing agency to working on generative AI projects? For example, at Breakpool.dev or even other places, like, because you were in marketing and then now you're doing AI projects. Like, what
Mhm.
led to that shift?
Yeah, it was a big change. I worked in marketing for my whole career really, and then in 2020 when I left the agency, I started messing around with different things, and one of the things was AI. Like I got access to GPT-3 pretty early on in 2020, and then I was messing around with that quite a bit. But there was no money in it right then. Like unless you're a machine learning engineer and you could build these tools yourself, then there weren't that many opportunities. Like it wasn't very popular an interest. So I kept playing around with it, but I was doing other consulting. And then it was really when ChatGPT came out that all of a sudden everyone needed an AI strategy. It was like so that was when I started to make money as a prompt engineer, and I was doing training for people, but I was still doing my traditional marketing consulting as well. And it got to a point last year where I was just like, look, everything is happening so fast in AI. I'm enjoying my AI work a lot more than I'm enjoying my marketing work. And even though the marketing stuff was really, it was lucrative, I was getting paid a really good hourly rate. I made the maybe crazy in retrospect choice to just cancel all of my consulting contracts and go full time on AI. And there's a shame because I actually really liked working with some of those clients, but I felt like the opportunity cost was too high. And at the time as well, we'd been offered a book deal with O'Reilly, so I needed to focus on that. And we had a popular Udemy course which was taking off, so we had some money coming in from that. So it wasn't like too much of a risk, but yeah, I did have to make a pretty big sacrifice in terms of my hourly rate in order to make that transition. Now it's actually kind of getting back up to where it was before, and the Udemy course has grown, and the book is out now as well. So it's all starting to pay off really in the past few weeks.
Interesting. I mean, obviously, I came across your book too, and even I'm like almost just want to buy the book and start reading it. And Udemy course, even that sounds pretty interesting. So, I mean, if you don't mind, like, can you give us like an overview of what to expect in the book, and like like what are all like some of the practical scenarios that you might have applied, or like examples that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, so when we got offered the book deal, we knew that the whole process was going to take like a year to a year and a half to produce the book. So we were thinking like, how on earth do you write a book on AI when everything's changing every week? And we had to
Right.
basically go back to the beginning and figure out, okay, well, what are the things that have remained constant over the time we've been working in AI? So we looked at all the different tips and tricks and hacks that we used for GPT-3, and then we said, okay, what is still useful today? Like what a lot of the things that we used to do are no longer necessary, but what has stayed the same, and what will continue to stay the same when GPT-5 comes out. So that was the basis for the book, and we came up with these 5 prompting principles, which we can go into in more detail. We kind of act as like a checklist of things you can do to improve the results you get from AI that work across models. Like it works with GPT-4, it works with Anthropic Claude, it works with Midjourney, like whatever the AI model is. These are the things that generally tend to work. And once we had that foundation in place, then we had something that would work for the book. It's also the basis of the Udemy course. although the format is very different. With the book, it's much more of a narrative of end to end. If you read that book, you pay attention to everything in that book, then you have a really good foundation of like you could be a prompt engineer. And it is a technical book. The course is technical as well. You do need to at least be able to run some Python code. I wouldn't say that you need a lot of technical ability to be a prompt engineer. You typically, especially because ChatGPT can explain the code to you, you typically just need maybe like 6 months to 2 years worth of experience. I would say, at least to start doing some basic stuff. But yeah, for the Udemy course, it's a little bit different. It's still based on the five principles, and we still teach you that. But the Udemy course is much more tactical. It's much more like here's all the cool stuff that
Right.
we found recently. And we update the Udemy course every month just to make sure that the stuff that's not needed anymore, we remove it. So the book is more timeless and strategic, and the course is much more tactical and time bound.
I mean, obviously, like I'm just moving on, like to drill more into that. Like so, the thing is,
Mm-hmm.
I can see myself and my team using generative AI more and more using ChatGPT or Claude or one of those interfaces to
Mm-hmm.
like like just hustle around, find out answers, come up with like outlines and copies. So what do you think? Like how do you see generative AI transforming the marketing landscape, especially in areas like creative testing and campaign optimization?
Yeah, I've been using generative AI a lot for creative. First of all, I use it to analyze creative quite a bit and figure out, okay, what are the hooks, like what are the interesting themes of these creatives. So like I'll look at ad library quite a bit, or I'll look at competitors ads and say, okay, what are the sorts of things that are working. And AI is really good at taking unstructured data and then turning it into structured labels. I also look at customer reviews. I throw a bunch of customer reviews off in the into ChatGPT and then say, okay, like what are the themes that come out here. So that's definitely been a big one. Just the intelligence of like the market research is much easier to do with AI. I also have a script that I run where I can upload a bunch of images and it will tag what's in the images. You could tag like different ads and say, okay, well, what pictures of men tend to perform better than pictures of women, or whatever it is. So armed with all that stuff, then I can come up with more creative ideas. But then I tend to get AI to generate those creative ideas as well, given the context that I've pulled out from the insights. So I'm using AI at like every step. Um, Typically, then I'm generating a prototype version or like an example version, and then sending it on to a real designer or a real copywriter to do the final version. So I wouldn't say I'm using AI as much in production. Usually the ads that I submit are not like AI ads, although there are some clients that are comfortable with that. But I'm using it in every step of the planning and research process before we get to that final result. And it just means that we have more ideas, we have better researched ideas, and then we're kind of just
Right.
using a human to polish at the end.
Really cool. I mean, yeah, talking more about like ads, like you successfully scaled Facebook ads for SumoMe,
Mm-hmm.
literally like reducing their CPA by 50% while growing the user base significantly. Like, I'm just curious from one marketer to another marketer, like what strategies do you use to achieve this? And how can other marketers replicate your success?
Yeah, I think it's just doing the work. Like, I mean, it sounds silly, but whenever I've seen a company that isn't growing with their ad account performance, I ask them like, what have you been doing? Like, what did you launch last week, right? Like, what have you gotten live recently? What have you tested? And usually they're just not testing very much. They're caught up in planning. They're caught up in politics, internal meetings, and they're not actually launching that much. And I think ultimately the major difference that we had at Ladder versus other agencies is just that we would just launch every single week. For someone like Sumo Me, I was
Right.
launching 5 to 10 ad concepts every week. And for Monzo Bank, which was a client we worked with at Ladder, we were literally launching hundreds of ads every month, and then just cutting the ones that didn't work, and learning from them, and then rolling out new versions based on what did work. So I think it's really just like a lot of people get caught up in, should we use cost caps or bids, or should we structure the account like this or like that, or let's go and figure out tracking, and get tracking working really well. And I think that these are all really advanced forms of procrastination. Ultimately, the only thing that can really improve performance significantly is if you find a new audience to target, or if you find a new creative that resonates with that audience. And if we get those two things right, that's 80-90% of the performance you can get in an account.
Right. So volume is the name of the game. Like, I don't know, move fast, fail fast, learn fast. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like people have this outdated notion that you could either do high quantity or you could do high quality, and what they don't realize is that high quality comes from high quantity. Like if you get a team that doesn't ship anything and they just try and ship the perfect ad, that ad is going to be so out of touch with the market. It's just going to be what they think is perfect. It's not going to be what the market actually responds to. Whereas if you ship a lot of rough ideas and then you see one that gets some signal, you double down on it, then you're going to get a much better view of what the market really wants, and you're just going to have much better information when you're making decisions. So high quantity leads to high quality.
100%. I mean, I can't agree more on that. Um, yeah. So, I mean, on that note, you also like mentored. You're a mentor, right? And you've mentored over
Mhm.
200 marketers with high ratings. What common challenges do marketers face today, like in your opinion, those who come to you, and how do you guide them through these challenges? Like, what is your, like there is AI, there is like the whole traditional channels are like drying up. So, what is your advice?
Yeah, so Growth Mentor is the platform I do my mentoring through, and the reason I got into it was I was doing it before when I was at Ladder, and when I left, I kind of missed the people coming up to me for advice. When I was running Ladder, we had 50 people on the team. I was constantly every day being asked like, "Oh, can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?" And doing the growth mentoring calls was a nice substitution for that, and it was much more relaxing when I didn't have an obligation to do it. Like I was just doing it for free, for fun, and the community there is just really nice, and they show up to the calls prepared with notes of like, here's what I need to get out of the call. So the main things that come up in those calls are really just a validation calls. Like they're usually doing the right things, actually. Especially the more junior people, like they tend to have pretty good instincts, which is surprising to a lot of people. But usually they're not being listened to by their boss, or they are just they're excited. They have a good idea, but they don't know if it's really a good idea or not. Like they often just need someone with some experience to come in and say,
Right.
yes, this is the right thing to do. Yes, this is what I would do, and they just need that confidence. And I think that's major. That's the major difference between someone with experience and someone without experience. Is not necessarily that the someone with experience knows, has better ideas. It's really just that they are capable of being confident in their ideas when they have them. And that's a lot of what I'm doing on these calls, is just validating their approach and saying, yeah, like this is pretty smart, and here's why. And then they have the confidence to go away and execute, because the biggest killer I realize is doing nothing, because you're like waiting to find the perfect idea, and actually, if
Right.
it just did anything, it would help. Giving them that confidence really just helps them get moving, and it's quite rewarding as well when you give someone some advice and then they go and do it, and then they come back to you and go, yeah, oh, yeah, it actually worked really well. Thanks for that. So yeah, this is quite fun. But I also do it a little bit for a selfish reason as well, which is that because I'm not like day to day running campaigns anymore, and because I'm I like when I through the agency got quite senior. I didn't really have my hands on the pulse. I didn't like know
Right.
exactly what was going on in the Facebook Ads Manager or whatever. So that's the kind of selfish reason I do it, is to keep my head in the game. Like understand like what it is that the real problems they're facing, like what tactics are working these days. What's not working, what's what are people trying, and it just gives me ideas. And quite often when I would go on a consulting call, I'd be able to reference something that I heard on a mentoring call and say like, oh, I know that there's this tactic is working for some people, so maybe you should try that. So I would say it's not all mentoring isn't all selfless, right? Like you actually get something really good from it as well, which is like you learn from the usually from the younger generation, like what problems are there, what things are working, what's not working, and so that's really valuable to be involved in.
This
Because
reminds me
as I say,
reminds me
yeah.
of like two separate things that I usually keep hearing. One is like execution kind of trumps strategy almost always,
Hmm.
and another is like my I used to work at this B2B SaaS product called Spendflow, and the head of marketing used to keep telling me that, hey, we need to appear bigger than what we are. Like often we need to take bold bets. We need to like run bigger campaigns. So, for example, when we raised our Series A round, we kind of ran a campaign on Times Square and at New York. I mean, at that time, being a startup from India, we were like really, really small. I mean, it's like a really less number of people who would actually do that.
Hmm.
And yeah, so this kind of reminds me of that, right? Like, it's just the name of the game is like kind of confidence. You just need to go out with that bold bet or like the large claim saying that, hey, we are going here to actually change the game for you. And we are here to stay, because the biggest risk factor that people consider or you potential users consider is that whether will you still be in business. And if we de-risk that, I think through marketing, that's pretty much a great way.
Yeah, exactly. I think what a lot of people get wrong with strategy is that they think that if they just think through every problem, and they anticipate every issue, then they will mitigate the downside, right? Like they'll be able to predict what's going to go wrong, and then therefore they'll be able to not fail. And it's crap because in reality, the problems that you're going to face based that like quite often things that you've never heard of before, and you couldn't have known in advance that that was going to be a problem. And equally, a lot of the your biggest worries, things you're worried about today, turn out to not even matter in like 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. So it's always a losing strategy to overthink your plan based on the information you have today. And it's a much better strategy, I think, overall, to go and just make something happen and see what the response is. As long as you're not like committing too much resource to that action, then you can't really fail. Like I wouldn't recommend you go all in on one marketing tactic, without thinking about it. But equally, thinking too long about it, and then never even trying it is a guaranteed failure as well. So yeah,
Right.
usually what I tell people is action creates information. I think that's like a quote from Paul Graham, I believe, originally, or the founder of Coinbase says it as well. But it's you can actually get better information by taking an action, and then that better information might inform your strategy, and lead to ultimately much better results.
100%. Yeah, can't agree more. So yeah, so I mean, like you are clearly like killing it in marketing, killing it in growth, killing it in AI. what emerging trends in AI and prompt engineering are you most excited about? And how do you foresee these trends impacting the growth, marketing, or even like the product management industry?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things I'm finding is that when I start working with a company on their prompt engineering, and usually it's a case of like we have this task that we're trying to automate with AI, and we're running into problems with it. It almost always becomes a measurement issue, and I found the same thing with growth as well. It's all about how you measure performance, and if you can measure performance well, then you can A/B test different ways to improve the performance. But what I see in a lot of these organizations is they just don't know how to measure good performance, and that's true for growth. And that was what we spend a lot of time on at Ladder. But it's also true with AI. Like when you're writing a blog post, you might say AI is writing bad blog posts, and you go, okay, well, what is a good blog post? And they have no real way of they just say, oh, I know it when I see it, right? Like quite often the evaluation that they're doing is they're like the CEO or the founder is looking at the blog post and saying, I think this is bad, and usually the first thing that I'm doing is asking them to evaluate properly, like what is a good blog post, what is a bad blog post, and like what are the rules that make it a good blog post versus a bad blog post. Once you have that objective framework for measurement, then you can start to really A/B test and understand what improves performance, not just from the AI but also from the humans as well, because sometimes you need a human as part of that process as one of this, a few of the steps in the chain in order to get to that final blog post. So now what that's leading to is that almost always the best evaluation framework ends up being asking an LLM to evaluate the blog post because very quickly it gets too expensive for humans to review every blog post. When you're generating thousands of them with AI, like it's pretty hard to get a human to evaluate everything. Also, we can't really program good evaluation because you'd have to know every single rule. You'd have to write, some code in order to, check whether the blog post meets that criteria or not. So quite often, what happens is you have the LLM judging, saying, "Okay, this is a good blog post based on what the CEO told me." Right. So you're using the LLM as a judge. Now, where I think this is going is instead of me prompting ChatGPT and then getting the blog post in return, we're going to me prompting ChatGPT and then ChatGPT telling me then if the blog post is good based on what I've told it I want. And then we're going to go one step further, which is ChatGPT will start to write those evaluation rules as well. So what will happen is it will start to work autonomously. You won't need the CEO to write the rules of what is a good blog post. Instead, ChatGPT will look at your Google Analytics and then see what things are correlated with good blog posts, and then it would write some rules for evaluation of the blog post generator. So this agentic workflow where you don't just prompt and then get a response, prompt and get a response, but like the AI is working in a loop and prompting itself and then evaluating its own response. I think like that's where this is going. And when you get to that point, you're going to have an AI agent in your Slack or over your email. You just email them and say, "Hey, how many blog posts have you got going out this week? Like, how are they performing?" And you'll be able to work with them much like they are like a member of your team. I think like that's this AI employee thing. I think most businesses will have more AI employees than human employees in the next 10 years.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I can't wait for that day. That's going to be nuts. And this is just going to give rise to more and more, if I'm not wrong, like smaller teams making like multi-million dollar industries, like our organizations. Uh, I mean, that's already kind of the case because of the economic tailwinds and stuff. But with
Mhm.
AI, this is going to become more and more of a reality, right?
Yeah, I think what you'll see is you'll see the rise of one man businesses, and like you'll see some businesses it's just one person, one full time person who are making millions of dollars a year. You're already starting to see that with the indie hacking movement, but then you'll also start to see bigger businesses instead of hiring, they'll be onboarding more AI processes. I don't think necessarily we're going to see a downturn in the number of jobs, but really, there'll be more things being done with the same amount of humans. They won't expand their hiring, but they probably won't fire a bunch of people either. I suspect what you'll see is, as a human in an organization, by default, you'll be a manager, right? Like you'll be managing AI, like even earlier in your career, you'll be managing AI employees. And if you do a good job of that, then you'll be promoted to manage maybe other humans as well. But yeah, like I suspect that a lot of the work that you do as a junior person will be in like rating AI responses and like teaching them new skills and saying, okay, here's how you write a blog post, or and like doing primary research on the best way to do something, like actually doing some creative kind of insight analysis to figure out something new to put in the prompt. I think like that's going to be really the role of humans in this new type of organization.
Right. So one of the primary use cases as we see as of today that we see is chatbots with AI, right?
Hmm.
And there are more and more people using Perplexity, using ChatGPT, or even like some of the competitors like that. And I mean, I was just talking to like Ethan Smith from Graphite recently.
Hmm.
I had a Q&A with him, and he was like mentioning about being bullish on chat engine optimization. Kind of like optimizing your
Hmm.
content to appear on chat results as well, along with SEO. What is your take on that? Where do you think SEO is going towards? Is it going to be more towards optimizing for chat? SEO still going to be predominant? What's that going to be?
Yeah, I think that I've certainly used search a lot less since AI came out. Almost every random question I have now goes into ChatGPT or Claude first. One good example is Stack Overflow. I haven't actually visited Stack Overflow in 6 months, but like when before I started using AI to write code, I was visiting maybe like 20 times a day because I wasn't good at coding yet, and I was trying to learn how to solve these problems. And I would always Google the error code that I was getting, and then I'd end up on Stack Overflow, right? And someone would have written something. So I think it definitely decreases the demand for search. Although I would say we're probably going to have more searches overall, because what's going to happen as some of these UIs get developed, like Perplexity is leading the way here. Um, when I ask the AI something, I'd like the AI to go do a search for me or multiple searches and then come back to me with the answer. Because one of the biggest problems with AI is that it tends to hallucinate. It tends to make up facts, and it's hard to know what's real and what's not. So the way that Perplexity has solved it is the Perplexity bot goes and does the searches for you, and then it brings back citations and says, okay, I learned this from this website. I learned this from this website. So we'll probably see more searches overall, but the searches will be done by AI bots instead of humans. Now, the interesting thing is that there will be some, especially in the early days, there will be some ways to optimize your content so that AI picks it up, and it'll be different from how we currently optimize content. But I would say that that's still relatively new as a field, and ultimately, the things that would get you indexed for human searches are the same things that get you indexed for bot searches, right? Like if you have good content, if it's authoritative, if it's clearly structured, if you have the right keywords in place, these are things that are always going to matter. So I don't like. I think in general, AI search is going to overtake regular search, but I don't think there's really that much you have to do to address it. I feel like a lot of the things you're doing for SEO are still going to be beneficial when it's the bot searching instead of a human. I think that the one major thing I've changed in my SEO strategy is that I basically don't write anything that doesn't have primary research attached. Unless I've done an
Right.
experiment, or unless I've done some market research, and that's what I'm writing about, then I just won't bother writing it, because the type of SEO spam that we used to do, where we'd hire someone in the Philippines for $5 an hour to write 600-word blog post, like that just is not necessary anymore, right? Like ChatGPT can already do a better job, and therefore it's not really worth writing if ChatGPT can generate it. That stuff still ranks in some cases, and I've seen, but then it's very brittle. Like if that's all your content and it's all AI generated and there's no primary research, then you're at risk of having your whole site de-indexed, I think. So yeah, what I try to look
For
for
sure.
now, the major thing that has changed is I try and differentiate my content based on some proprietary information that I have that other people don't have, and I'm happy for AI to write it. And actually, AI is a better writer than me quite often. But like I go and do the experiment, and then I give the results to AI, and AI writes it.
I see a lot of folks on Twitter, like Peter Yang. I don't know if Lenny uses too, but they keep tweeting about the fact that like they come up with this raw brain dump, and then they kind of do it another pass. They write down their entire article, their entire newsletter, and then let AI do the editing on top of it. It's a great editor, but to like just like you said, like coming up with like actual facts and actual research, it's the human's job to actually go out there and build that level of like original information, right? Like that's still going to
Mm-hmm.
be from made by us. Uh, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think that there's also still going to be a point in the value chain for human writers. Like, I wrote a post for Lenny recently, and I wrote this book on AI, for O'Reilly, and I didn't actually use AI for those pieces, right? Like I mean, I used AI a lot to ideate and come up with ideas of how I could approach things, but I wrote all of that stuff by hand, and because Lenny's audience is 700,000 people, and it's so worth it for me to like spend 4 or 5 days writing that line by line, and it's worth a real human's effort. Whereas if I was just publishing a blog post to my blog, then I just get AI to do that because it's way less impactful, and I can't justify spending 5 days for a blog post on my blog, right? So I would say that while AI can automate a lot of what a human is doing for mid to low tier publications, it's just going to free us up to write things that really matter for these top tier publications like Lenny's blog or like O'Reilly. When you're publishing a book, so I think that there's going to be like this escape to quality where the really top tier publications. It's going to be a real human doing real research and then really writing the post or really writing the book.
Yeah, this is so interesting. I mean, I was recently recording another podcast as well with Jacob Bank, who's the founder of Relay.app, right? So Relay is a AI automation tool similar to Zapier, but with AI.
Mm-hmm.
So he was telling this that was super interesting for me. We were chatting about AI as well, and he was like, so the content generated by AI in general depends like on how much involvement is required is actually like it's directly proportional to what's at stake. Like for example, if you're going to be writing an article for Lenny's, that's like a lot of things are at stake. Your reputation's at stake, and there's a huge audience. There is a better reward, so you're probably going to spend a lot more time. Or
Mm-hmm.
even like if it's going to be like seen by a lot more people on the internet, then you should try to make it as original as possible. But then if it's a summary of a call recording or like notes from a meeting, so that can be AI. I mean, AI still does like a fantastic job at it, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
who cares if it's like it looks like AI, feels like AI, it does the job. It's pretty
yeah. In
interesting.
a lot of ways, people actually prefer AI for these tasks, right? Because AI is already way better at summarizing meetings than I am. And in that scenario, I'd actually prefer an AI summary than I would to have one of my friends or my colleagues like take rigorous notes, right? Like because then they're out of the conversation, they can't really enjoy it. So yeah, I think that's another thing I noticed in the Lenny post as well, as we ran blind experiments of like AI versus human on some product management tasks. And the real surprise was even though 70% of people could tell which one was AI, still like the majority of people preferred the AI. So like we're actually I think getting to a turning point where instead of people trying to tell which is AI because they don't like AI responses. Instead, we're going to, I think, quickly get to the point where it'll be obvious what was written by AI because it's the best answer. And AI for more and more tasks, AI is going to be better than a human. It's only really a short term phenomenon that you can that AI is worse than a human. I think as these models get better, we get GPT-5, GPT-6, whatever. It's going to get to the point where you don't want a human to do most tasks, and you actually prefer to have the AI do it.
Oh yeah, of course. I remember seeing that graph where, like, with every release, every 6 months, it's becoming 2x better than the previous version,
Yeah,
and
two x better and
that's
50%
scary.
cheaper.
Uh, yeah, it's scary and interesting. And like this leads me to this. Like, I just have like two more questions. One is that, like, I saw that experiment. It's like super interesting. What led you to that experiment? I mean, what was the uh, idea behind the experiment? I know that you wanted to see how many people can actually differentiate between AI and humans. Like, what were the conclusions? Like, can you talk a little bit about that? And what are the metrics that you wanted to track? Is there anything interesting behind that?
Yeah, so the Lenny post came from an idea I had while looking back on some of the presentations I had done. I mentioned before I had done some corporate training and kind of taught people how to do prompt engineering. And one of the things that always catches people's imagination was when I would do a blind test because I realized that we unfairly judge AI. I think through self-preservation. Like I don't want AI to do. I don't want to admit that AI is doing a better job than me because if that's the case, then what was the point in me being here? So I had run blind tests before in my presentations, and I would get like a task that company does day to day, and I would get a real human to do the task, and then I would get AI to do the task, and I would do some prompt engineering to make it look a bit more human like, and then I'd say, okay, here's solution A, here's solution B. First of all, which was done by AI, and second of all, which one do you prefer? And yeah, usually only about 40% of people would guess right. So I think Lenny's audience is smarter, maybe I don't know, they're more discerning, or maybe product management tasks. AI is just better at guessing. I'm not sure why so many people guessed which was AI. But the really interesting thing was that the majority of people preferred AI, and that was the first time that had happened for me. Usually, I could get 20 to 40% of people preferring AI in these workshops, and so the Lenny result was like a real surprise. It's getting 55% in some cases preference to AI. So I think it's important to do these types of experiments because it wakes people up, makes them realize like what's happening, and makes them think a little bit more about what their role is in the organizations, because I don't think this means that AI is going to replace product managers. AI can't work autonomously yet, right? And you still need a human to take accountability for a product, right? You still need to be the CEO of a product, essentially, as a product manager. But maybe I think people in the product management industry are underestimating how good AI is. And if they can offload some of their more repetitive tasks to AI, and if we can convince them that it's actually working pretty well now, then they're going to enjoy their jobs more. Like they're going to get to, like I've been a product manager in the past, and I got barely any time to do any customer research. Right, like I was always in meetings. I was always like doing reports for managers, and I was always putting together product requirement
Right.
documents and things. And if you can get AI to do that for you, then you can actually do the stuff that really matters. Like you can talk to customers. You can find interesting insights. You can develop really eclectic tastes. Like you can go spend the day trying out Chinese messaging apps to see if there are any features you could be inspired by to put into your product. Like whatever it is, I think like you can do more creative work now if you manage to offload this repetitive stuff to the AI.
100%. I think those are the kind of like things that is like super interesting to me as well. Like, I keep telling it to my team. It's like you shouldn't be threatened by AI. You should rather learn how to harness that power and use it, because that way you can actually enjoy your work more. Like in the past, why did we even hate our jobs? Is because like of all this like mundane, boring grunt work that keeps coming on our plates again and again. Like the fact that we need to summarize a meeting, or like we need to collect data, we need to put all these things in a spreadsheet. So all these things can, at least if not 100%, at least like 50-60% can be done with AI to some extent right now. And with prompt engineering, maybe that can be better, the quality can be better, like 70-80%. And you just need to review it, right? Like you have this trustworthy all the time with you. You can just be like, hey, can you just get this data for me? Can you just go write that copy for me? And that is just amazing. I mean, yeah, it's just going to give superpowers to everyone, provided they just harness it right.
Yeah, I think so.
Right.
Yeah, and people forget that a few hundred years ago, 95% of us worked in farms. Like peasants working the land. That's like that was the entire economy. You maybe had some lucky people who worked as a blacksmith or in mining. And then it was only a very small fraction of the economy that were knights or royalty. And the lives that we have today, it's closer to what royalty had back then. Even if you work as a minimum wage job, you still have like an iPhone, right, which is more access to information that than Bill Clinton had as a president. He didn't have the internet, right, like we have today. So it's kind of crazy to me that like how much better our lives are now, and it's thanks to technology, and AI is just going to be a continuation of that. Like, yes, maybe 95% of the jobs that we're doing today are going to go away, or 95% of the tasks that we do within those jobs. But it's just going to free us up to do more stuff, right? Like instead of publishing, 4 blog posts a week or whatever as a full time job, instead you could publish like 4,000, right? And your job is building the system that writes the posts. I think that's more interesting. You can have a larger impact because one small change to that system could lead to millions more people reading what you designed, right? So yeah, I feel like we're just going to have more impact per person, and the one problem I foresee is that if people don't adapt quick enough, because we had a long time to move from agrarian economies to the industrial revolution, and AI is happening a lot faster. So the real problem I foresee is if people are hesitant to adopt these tools, then the jobs might be displaced quicker than they could get into the new opportunities. So that's my only real concern. But I think that it's not something we can solve. On a on a company basis. It's not something that has to be solved on a societal basis. And I think politicians are already thinking about this stuff. Heads of large organizations are already thinking about this stuff. Like Sam Altman is already ran experiments for UBI, like universal basic income. So I think people are already thinking about this stuff, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. But as an individual, the main thing you can do is really just start to adopt these tools and start to play with them and see how you can work effectively with them, because that gives you the best chance of being along for the ride.
100%. Yeah, I mean, instead of inhibiting the change, just embrace the change, right? Uh, Totally. So I have a quick rapid fire round for
Mm-hmm.
you. I mean, especially you are drenched in AI right now, and I'm sure that you might be uh, using some like cutting edge AI tools. So, what is your Swiss Army knife in your stack? Like, let's say on your day to day, like, what is that one tool that is your Swiss Army knife?
This might surprise you, but I actually use basically no tools. I do everything raw with AI. Like I code new things myself, custom things myself with AI. Like I found I have very little patience for adopting new tools these days, because it's actually quicker for the AI to build something custom for me than it is for me to learn how to use the tool.
Wow, that's probably the first time I heard something like that. I mean, you'd rather just build it using AI than just go try a new tool.
Yeah, especially because when you go to try and use a tool, you don't know what it does. Like the homepage doesn't explain it very well, and then you have to sign up with your
Right.
email, so you get spammed. And then sometimes you have to put a credit card in, and you don't know if it's going to be good or not. And that's if they even let you sign up self-service. Like some of these tools, you have to talk to a salesperson, and I'm just like, I don't have time for that. I want to solve my problem now, so I just type my prompt into Claude, and it builds a custom tool for me, and then it's running, and then I can throw it away, and I haven't spent any money on it. Who cares?
Interesting. Wow. But then now I think the next question is, like, if you cannot live without like one tool, what is that? Like, I mean, I'm just curious. In a way, like it should be some kind of a playground, or it should be some kind of a IDE or something, right? Like where you're using it to build the AI apps.
Yeah. So I would say like the Claude itself, or like Chat GPT itself. That's like the one tool that I can't do without, right? Because that is what is doing 95% of my work now. But I'll give a shout out to Cursor, which is an IDE. It's based on VS Code, and you can imagine it as basically GitHub Copilot on steroids. It's like all the
Oh yeah,
features that GitHub should have built in the past year,
I'm a
and
big
and
fan
I,
of
I only yeah
Cursor here as well. Yeah.
yeah I only
Sorry.
adopted it a couple of weeks ago, but it was like it's one of the few tools I've adopted, where I feel like an absolute fool for not adopting it earlier. I had it on my to do list for a couple of months, and I would have a much smaller to do list today if I had adopted it back then. So yeah, I would say Cursor have done an excellent job in a very difficult space.
Right. Awesome. So, cool. The next one is any undiscovered gems, like that, that needs more popularity that is in your tool, like in your toolkit.
Yeah, I'll give you a technique actually rather than tool. So because it's relatively counterintuitive. So everyone knows that if you add examples of a task to your prompt, then it tends to perform better at that task, right? So if you're generating a social post, if you put in a bunch of social posts that you like into your prompt, then you'll tend to get better results when it generates a new social post. Now, what most people don't realize is that AI can generate those examples, I don't know why it works. It shouldn't really work, right? But quite often, if I ask AI to generate good examples of social posts, and then I put them into the prompt, and then ask it to generate more examples, it actually does a better job. So even it's like AI is basically kind of teaching itself how to do the task better, if you think about it that way. There's some evidence that this works. Like in AI research, they would call this synthetic data, meaning instead of getting real training data, you just had AI generate the data to train. And it works really well. It's actually what Anthropic does to train Claude. OpenAI has talked about it as well. But it's really surprising and interesting to me that AI can actually do a better job when you ask AI to generate good examples and then put that back into the prompt. So it's kind of like teaching itself to do a better job. That's really surprising to me, but I'm finding I'm using it pretty much everywhere now.
Interesting. Uh, wow. Cool. So, Mike, I think I'm kind of at the end of my list here. So, any closing thoughts, anything interesting that you're working on, probably where people can find you, where you spend most of the time, LinkedIn, Twitter, or a newsletter maybe?
Yeah, so I'm hammer_mt on Twitter. That's probably the best place to find me. And the book is out now on Amazon. So if you search for prompt engineering for generative AI, the book is the one with an armadillo on the front. Every O'Reilly book has a different animal, and they chose armadillo for us. So you can't miss it. But yeah, like working on lots of different projects, lots of different interests. Like if you're working on AI and you want to ask me some questions or whatever, like just tweet at me and I'll respond.
Amazing. Thank you for joining for today's Smooth Operators Guide. And until next time, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for having me here.